We mark ourselves in the name of the Father, and of the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. And we do the prayer for our earth that the Holy Father composed and is in the front part of Laudato Si. And if you have a copy of that prayer, please pray along. All-powerful God, you are present in all the universe and in the smallest of your creatures. You embrace with your tenderness all that exists. Pour out upon us the power of your love, that we may protect life and beauty. Fill us with peace, that we may live as brothers and sisters, harming no one. O God of the poor, help us to rescue the abandoned and forgotten of this earth, so precious in your eyes. Bring healing to our lives, that we may protect the world and not prey on it, that we may sow beauty, not pollution and destruction. Touch the hearts of those who look only for gain at the expense of the poor on the earth. Teach us to discover the worth of each thing, to be filled with awe and contemplation, to recognize that we are profoundly united with every creature as we journey towards your infinite light. We thank you for being with us each day, and encourage us as we pray in our struggle for justice, love, and peace. Amen and amen. And as I mentioned when we first gathered and we talked about the preface and the introduction to the Holy Father's encyclical, the prayer itself pretty much encapsulates almost the entire encyclical itself, the true meaning, the true spirit of it. What we're going to look at this evening is chapter 1, and it's entitled, What is Happening to Our Common Home? The Holy Father in chapter 1 continues to build a foundation for how we will address all of what is happening to our earth from the perspective of faith, by continuing his outline of what state we find our world in as a result of our lack of collective and individual stewardship. One of the things that the Holy Father identifies is that what he refers to as rapidification, his word, rapidification. What the Holy Father means by this is the fact that there is a continued acceleration of all things that are affecting humanity, and what results is an intensified pace of life and work. Think about how life has changed over the years just for you. I often say I have more in common with my grandparents and my great-grandparents than I do with the kids today. Really. Very, very true for me, okay? Those of you who are my age or older, you've been in this valley and you can speak to this without hesitation. When I came to Silicon Valley in 1983, when it was just beginning to be referred to as the Silicon Valley, okay, rather than the Valley of the Heart's Delight. Remember that? That's what it was referred to. It might well be referred to as the Valley of Heartburn today. Okay? Especially when you're on the freeway, okay, at particular times. I remember when I thought it best to be on 280 or 101 before 5 o'clock, okay, to get somewhere without much traffic. And then it moved to 4 and to 3, and now it's down to 2, okay, if you really wanted to get somewhere in, a decent amount of time. The rapid pace of how our lives change is exponentially compared to how evolution changes. I'm a proponent, and this is why it's very strange for me to even be here right now. And those people that live with me, presently Father Bob, or I live in his rectory, I'm a proponent when the sun goes down, things are supposed to be relaxed. And yet, here we are, okay? When the sun goes down, especially during the winter, when I come home from school, I'm like, can I go out to dinner with my pajamas on? Okay? There's a cycle, and God developed that cycle, and we go against it. We fly against it all the time. The Holy Father speaks to the fact that indeed change is sometimes a necessity Yet it can also be a source of anxiety, especially when it causes harm to the world and the quality of life of much of humanity. I do a program at Santa Clara, and it's called Build, Plant, Grow. And what I do in that program, and it's online, it's free for anyone that wants to look at it. It's basically made for Catholic school teachers, catechists, And what I do is I do an exegesis of each of the readings for the weekend. I pull an ethic out of it, and then I apply it to a children's book. And then I develop lesson plans and those things that can be done at home for children to learn ethics, okay? And recently, I just did one on the book's titled Wangari's Seed of Peace, and it has to do with perseverance. It's about a young woman who leaves Africa because she has a scholarship to go to the school in the United States. But upon her return to Africa, she finds that there are no birds singing, there's nothing going on because all the trees are gone, okay? The deforestation has been going on. And so she, in this story, and this is a true story, decides that with 9 seedlings, she's going to start to bring back the trees to her native village. And of course, many people laugh at her, but then there are those people that get behind her and say, we're going to do the same thing, okay? That whole concept of what are we going to do? How will we bring our environment back? The Holy Father speaks of climate as a common good. When he speaks to that fact that we have a solid scientific consensus that the planet is warming as a result of our not living in harmony with it, but rather our wanting to control it. Gee, the thought of us, human beings, wanting to control. Boy, isn't that new? I don't think so. We've long wanted to control our environment and oftentimes the people in our lives. The challenge is placed before all inhabitants, and the problem arises when those nations who historically caused a great deal of damage to increase economic productivity are now willing to make the changes needed, and those same nations are asking the same of other nations that are just beginning to get a handle on improving their economy and are using the same means that earlier countries and economies used, okay? Prior to the Industrial Revolution, the 2 largest economies were China and India. Then after the Industrial Revolution, certainly the Western countries, and the United States in particularly, moved, and we used all kinds of things that, unknowingly, at least at that time, were doing damage to the environment. Now, emerging economies want to do the same thing, and we're saying, oh no, it's going to hurt the earth. So there's going to be some contention back and forth between the emerging economies and the economies that are already established. Just recently, I was listening to NPR, and there was a discussion of the challenge that developing economies and nations are facing in light of climate change. For example, the world is saying to Brazil, where the Amazon and the rainforest are, they are considered the lungs of the world. And so the world is saying to Brazil, you have to stop doing what you're doing. And Brazil lashes back to other countries, said, you did the damage to begin with, and you flourished, and now we're just trying to flourish as well. Okay? So you can see both sides of the story. Okay? It's going to be a catch-22 until we all get a better idea how to be in this together. I don't know if any of you ever read any of Thomas Friedman. Have you ever heard of him? He's a New York Times columnist. And he wrote The Lexus and the Olive Tree. Okay? And he talks of this exact issue. Okay? That there is going to be an issue between those economies that already exist and have done damage and those economies that are starting to emerge using the same methodologies. Okay? So we're going to be caught in it. In paragraph 25, the Holy Father speaks of one of the greatest dangers that we are encountering in all of our areas, and that is widespread indifference. Widespread indifference. Okay? And we all have been somehow or other affected by indifference at one time or another. Apathy is one of those absolutely destructive elements in the world. You might recall a story that Jesus speaks of in the Scriptures, and I'll read it for you. It's the story of Dives and Lazarus. You remember it? Just in case you don't. It comes out of Luke's Gospel. There was a rich man who dressed in purple and fine linen, and who feasted sumptuously every day. And at his gate lay a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who longed to satisfy his hunger with what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs would come and lick his sores. The poor man died and was carried away by angels to be with Abraham. The rich man also died and was buried. In Hades, where he was being tormented, he looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. He called out, "Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am in agony in these flames." But Abraham said, "Child, remember that during your lifetime you received your good things, and Lazarus in like manner did not. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. Besides all of this, between you and us, a great chasm has been fixed, so that those who might want to pass from here to you cannot do so, and no one can cross from there to us." He said, "Then, Father, I beg you, send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, that he may warn them, so that they will not also come into this place of torment." Abraham replied, "They have Moses and the prophets. They should listen to them." He said, "No, Father Abraham, but if someone goes to them from the dead, they will repent." He said to him, "Even if they do not listen to Moses, and the prophets, neither will they be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead." Now, the point of the story is Dives is not actively involved in hurting Lazarus. He doesn't do anything to him, does he? But rather, he's indifferent. He's apathetic to Lazarus' plight, and he just simply chooses not to see him. Okay? There are a great many parallels regarding the damage that indifference may bring about. Historically, we can think of the Holocaust during World War II. The indifference and great disbelief. No one would have believed that was happening. And there are many other cases, even in today's history, in today's modern times. Disbelief and indifference has advanced the climate crisis. And if we continue in disbelief and be indifferent, then things cannot change. Here's the first few sentences of paragraph 26 in chapter 1. Many of those who possess more resources and economic or political power seem mostly to be concerned with making the problems or concealing the symptoms, simply making efforts to reduce some of the negative impact of climate change. The Holy Father makes this statement, and it's directed squarely at Western society, specifically much of North America and Europe. You ever remember hearing the phrase from the Scripture? It comes out of the Old Testament book of Numbers, chapter 14, verse 18. "The sins of the father visits the children." The sins of the father visits the children. Our ancestors may not have known what they were doing, but my friends, we are caught with all of this now. So how will we make up for it so that future generations have a world that they can live in? Okay? Now I'm looking, I think there's just a few people here that are younger than me. Okay? Just a few. But let's take a look at it, okay? The earth's going to be okay for our lifetime. Okay? But what about your children and your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren? Okay? That's why everyone should be applauding the Holy Father for making this statement. He's what, 77 now? Maybe he'll live another 10 years, maybe another 20. But he's making this statement for the world, for future generations. He didn't have to do this. This has made him very unpopular. Okay? Prior to this, he was very popular. Okay? But that's the role of the Holy Father. The role of the Holy Father is to comfort and also to challenge. That prophetic role that each of us is given at baptism. To comfort when we need to comfort, and to challenge when we need to challenge. The Holy Father then goes on in the second portion of chapter 1. He turns his attention to the issue of water. Fresh drinking water is an issue of primary importance. I'm not so sure if this issue would be as important to us if we were not in such a drought. So if anything, the drought and our experience has been a gift for us. Okay? We can talk about stuff, but when it hits us directly, we have more of an open mind and an open heart. Okay? We are seeing just how crucial the issue of water is. We grow so much food necessary for the nation and the world that this drought has placed huge economic constraints on our economy and on the farmers. Water poverty is a phrase that the Holy Father uses. Water poverty. And when he refers to it in this section, he's referring to the fact that there are places where potable water is in such low supply and in many cases not available at all. So here we go. The sale of water in bottles. How many of you drank bottled water as a kid? Didn't you just go to the tap? Didn't you? Maybe you too drank water out of bottles, but I drank it out of the tap, okay? You never even thought of it. And the concept, if someone would have told you as you were growing up that people would be buying water, you would have said, what? Huh? Are you kidding me? Water is a gift from God, and it has become a commodity. Okay? It is said that the next huge war will be over water, potable water. And my friends, if there were a way to sell oxygen, or should I say the air that we breathe, I would not be surprised if it too would become a commodity. The Holy Father indicates that if water continues to become a commodity, it could well be the next cause for war. He is not the only one that has said that. He said it in this document, but there are many prophetic voices that have been saying it for decades. People fight for what they need, and there is nothing more common to every human need as clean air and drinkable water. There is in chapter 3 what is known as the loss of biodiversity, and I want you to take a look at this. I'm not able to do this because I'm not a very good person with these things, but there was, and this is an advertisement for this, on YouTube, there are a group of environmentalists that put together this wonderful program. They took various species that are endangered, and they put them up on the Vatican. There was a whole gathering of people, okay? They actually put it on St. Peter's in Rome, and there was music that went to it. I was hoping to present it tonight, but since I cannot, please take time and go to this. If you have a computer, go to that address and you will be able to see this. Okay? You will be able to see all these different species that are being threatened. The Holy Father speaks of the short-sightedness of developers in causing the diminishment of the earth's resources. Again, the Holy Father uses strong language here when he says that there has been a plundering of the earth's resources. Misuse is one thing. Plundering is a very, very strong verb. The loss of woodlands and waterways reduces biodiversity and species, and all these are being lost at an alarming rate. Can we really be indifferent if we see ourselves as connected to all created things? Okay? And again, we can go back to St. Francis of Assisi's canticle of the Sun, where he speaks of every creature as brother or sister. Brother sun, sister moon, sister water, pure and wonderful. Okay? All of those as connections. So how can we be indifferent? We do not have the right to destroy them. Rather, we are commissioned to be the stewards of them, to live in harmony with them. Okay? I grew up in coal country in Pennsylvania. And it was not unusual to see the land literally stripped, okay, from the mining. The coal mining industry would move in, strip out what they wanted, and then move on. Now, this is Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania was filled with forests, and still is, thank God. But around my area, I didn't know there were a lot of forests. It was just barren land. Okay? Even as we begin to think about restoring the earth, it has moved into big business. It's amazing, and the Holy Father does not use this word, but I will, for we often enter into an arrogance, thinking that we can substitute an irreplaceable and irretrievable beauty with something that we have created ourselves. That's arrogance. We cannot create. God creates. Okay? And for us to think that we can create, we're way out of line. If anything, we're called to be co-creators with God. Okay? We're called to be careful about a mentality that would pursue the fast profit at the cost of the ecosystem. We can be caught in being complicit with all of this if we do not do our homework when we're buying homes or products that result from this. Okay? And oftentimes we are so pushed to buy things. I don't know, do you do research? Do you? Yes, some do, some don't. Depends on what it is, right? Okay. The cost of items made in China, India, and so many other countries where the environment is not considered, let alone the horrid working conditions of others. These things we buy at reduced prices, and at what other cost? Okay? There are human beings behind these products. They are our brothers and sisters. Okay? We could be in their shoes. The forests and the wetlands must be protected, for they are the lungs of the earth. Then the Holy Father turns his attention to the oceans. Some of the issues that he outlines. The damage of the coral reefs, the home to several forms of life that are threatened by the agricultural runoff. The warming of the seas. The years of dumping garbage and waste into the oceans, now especially industrial waste. We must think that if God created and saw that it was good, then it was of value, and not just value for us and our use, but value in and of itself. Remember all those segments from Genesis and creation? And God saw that it was good. And God saw that it was good. Isolated by itself, it was good. God didn't say, and God saw that it was good for humanity. He saw that it was good in and of itself. This connectedness, very, very important for us. If this is true, then we must pause and reevaluate what the diminishment of these species and forms of life will mean for us as we continue to see things as utilitarian. Okay? Things are only important because of their usefulness to me. Okay? And God knows if we do that with the environment, we certainly are guilty of doing it to our brothers and sisters. Who's useful to me and who's not useful to me? In part 4, the Holy Father speaks to the decline in the quality of human life and the breakdown of society. We human beings belong to a natural order of the world, and as such, we have the rights to life, dignity, and happiness. Many of our brothers and sisters do not have these things because the areas in which they live are overcrowded, dangerous, and unhealthy. We have seen the development of green space areas in private living places that are walled in, or maybe I should say, to wall out others. Ever see those? The communities that have walled in green areas? I've got to have some green space so I can look at it. I don't care about anyone out there, but as long as I can have my green space, that's important. With all the advancements we've made with technology and economics, there has been yet another set of problems and challenges that have accompanied them. And this has contributed to the breakdown of our society, to drugs, greed, human trafficking. We have become or are becoming a people that looks for an immediate gratification, and this rapidification moves us ever more towards living unwisely. We don't take time to think, to reflect on what we are doing or what we have already done. The media creates a din of such great noise that we cannot hear the prophets, the poets, the philosophers, and the mystics that walk among us. I often say, even at the Catholic high school where I work, we are so busy about things that I no sooner finish one retreat and have to move on to something else that I have no time to reflect. Nor do those kids. Nor do those kids. We just keep moving and moving and moving. The rapidification that the Holy Father spoke of. Real relationships are being replaced with virtual relationships. I don't belong to Facebook. I'm sure it's very good for people. But in principle, I refuse. I want to talk to you. I'll call you on the phone and I'll say, let's meet at Starbucks for coffee. Okay? I don't email anyone on the campus unless it's for a time and a place to meet. I know that I drive all the other administrators crazy because I walk to their office and I say, I'd like to talk with you. If now is not a good time, tell me when. And I will often warn our faculty, our administration, our students to be very careful about how they write things in emails. You know the capital letters? When they put capital letters, they're supposed to be screaming at you. Yeah, I see a capital letter in an email to me. It's like, click, delete, bye-bye. That's not going to happen, okay? We are called to be in relationship. I have friends that I see and talk with and touch. I absolutely, as I said, refuse to use email for anything other than a time and a place to meet. Any of you who have taken a communications course, you will recall that 80% of all communications occurs well beyond words. Tonal quality of voice, facial expression, body posture. You can't get that in an email. You can't. So, what I want you to take a look at is some reflection questions. I'm going to hand some questions out to you, and I want you to take a look at them. Once everyone has these, then we can take a little bit of time. You can look at them. You can talk amongst yourselves, and then we can talk about them openly. Okay. I really want you to take a look at this one. How much water do you personally use each day? And do we even pay attention to it? Okay? Try to think about everything from your morning routines to your final flush before bedtime. I don't know that the Holy Father would put the question that way, but I did. Just your personal use. The Holy Father brings up and raises the question about the loss of biodiversity, all the different animals, species that are dying out. Now, we've been hearing about this for what? Decades, haven't we? Really? We have. But somehow or other, it was like it didn't immediately touch me. That's why I'm saying, let's go back to those things that are touching us right now. The water situation is touching us right now. Okay? If you have a family member who has diabetes, it touches you. You have an insight to it. Okay? If you have a family member or a good friend that suffers because of some demon such as alcohol or drugs, it touches you. You're more open to the plight and the concern of those individuals, what's going on for them in their lives. When things touch us, we're more open to it. How many of you have been touched by someone in your family or friends that were affected by HIV and AIDS? Anyone? AIDS, HIV, AIDS. Okay, these are the things. And I used to use this, okay? Remember in the old days when we were growing up, we were thought, and we had this particular attitude towards divorce, okay? And people that were divorced until it hit our family or friends that we knew were good people, okay? That's what I'm saying. All of this stuff, we need to say, okay, it hasn't touched me intimately, but it has touched my brothers and sisters, and I need to be in their shoes, okay? Our Holy Father is from an emerging economy. He lived among the poor. He took public transit. You don't think on that public transit there were people that were poor and were needy? He was affected by that. He saw the face of Christ in those individuals day in and day out. Okay? And you may have heard me speak on occasion in my homilies when I was the pastor of Five Wounds, the Portuguese National Church, which is right downtown. There was a corridor, a covered area, between the rectory and the church. And the 2 years I was the pastor there were 5 men that lived there. They were homeless. And once a week, I would cook for them. And oftentimes when I was going through that little area from the church to my rectory, those poor men would say, "Father, we cooked tonight. Can you join us?" I never, ever have gone to bed, even now that I'm here in Sunnyvale. I never go to bed without remembering and thinking of all the people that are out in the cold. I never take my bed for granted. But it took that experience at 5 Wounds to open my eyes, because I had direct experience. I had direct experience. And so do we all have to have direct experience before we put ourselves into the shoes of another person? I think it's one of the ways to learn. But, experiencing things, probably one of the best ways for us to learn. Okay? So take a look at those reflection questions, the first 3, and I would like for you to do a little conversation among yourselves. Vastly different from ours, I think. So, okay, how would you figure out how much water you used in one day? Would you even know how to begin? So if you don't know how to, you could read your meter. I couldn't read my meter. But if you read your meter and there's 6 or 7 people in the household, you just divide it by 6 or 7.
Or you could take your bill for the month and just divide it by the number of days in a month.
Okay.
And the monthly bill tells you whether you're doing good or not.
Yeah, I guess it does. I just saw on the news right before I got here, Milpitas is raising its water by 68%, the cost of their water, by 68%. So the people that are already having a difficult time, again, water is the commodity, okay?
But their point was, Father, that with the drought, some people have done a good job of conserving. Yeah. So now the revenue has declined, and they have to take care of whatever they do for the water. But I don't know how much of an increase that has been for them, and I think that was the problem in that meeting that I saw on the news. One gentleman said, I could accept a 10 or 20% increase, but I just have a hard time figuring out why it should be 60-some%.
Well, anytime you have a huge increase, people are like, what? Yeah. I recently was making arrangements for upcoming retreats, okay? And the retreat house was going up 60%. I said, now wait a minute. I said, 60% over 5 years or so, I'm okay with. But my kids right now, for my seniors to go on retreat, it's $225, which means I would have to charge them about $450, okay? That's a big jump. So we had a little meeting, and they were very wonderful, thank God. Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, all of those retreat centers have an infrastructure that is old, that needs to be updated, okay? They have deferred maintenance, okay? And I know lots about deferred maintenance. My God, I had 4 parishes with deferred maintenance, okay? And then, you get there and all of a sudden these things are coming at you because there was poor planning, okay? And so we need to start to think about how we're using what, how we're maintaining what, and what are the essentials, okay? What about the Holy Father's talk about the biodiversity and things that are going away, things that are becoming extinct? Do you think he's exaggerating that? Do you think it's accurate? What are your thoughts?
Oh, it's absolutely accurate. And one of the things that we can use to tell how much of an impact our actions are having is to look at the birds and their migratory patterns have been affected by either the changing in the temperature or access to certain lands. And then if they can't come to certain places, then that means that the insects that they eat would be more in supply, and then there would be, the unraveling.
Yeah.
And we've seen that. We've seen that a lot. And the old phrase, and you would know about this, the canary in the coal mine, the birds are the first indicator of a problem.
Yeah.
And so, they are the canaries of our environment.
Becoming, yep, exactly. Now, did you see something? This was some weeks ago, maybe months ago. There is a problem with the number of monarch butterflies being diminished, okay? And what do monarch butterflies need to survive? Milkweed. So, by God, any of you have yards? You could plant some milkweed, couldn't you? Right? I mean, it's asking, what are some of the simple things we could? I can't do anything physically to save the cheetah unless I give to a foundation. Okay? But what about planting some milkweed? There's a story about this lady. I think she's in Oakland, the East Bay. She's planting milkweed everywhere to do her part for the monarch butterfly. So once you take a look at that video of the species that are, diminished and on the Vatican, take a look and see what you might be able to do. What might be your interest, okay? What could you do? Okay, this is the other reflection question is on the digital communication. How has the digital world changed your relationships and attitudes, positively or negatively? Okay? As I mentioned, I love it for meeting times, getting basic information to people, place to meet, etc. Discussion, never. I won't do it. I won't do it. I can tell you, as the pastor of various parishes, I would get these emails from people, they were angry about everything, and I would simply write back, I can see that you're, feel strongly about this. Let us meet. That would be the end of it. That would be the end of it. They would never call. They would never make the appointment. They just wanted to get it out. Always watch also the time when you get the email. If it's 1 or 2 in the morning, you can bet they're in their cups. You can bet they're in their cups. Okay? By that meaning lots of drink. Okay? Just so you know. Just so you know. Okay. Anything over here? Digital relationships. Anything? Positive, negative. Misreading of information because you're not hearing the tonal quality.
And I think that for me, again, the attitude is that you're not developing, unless you're really a good writer who spend a lot of time, your relationships can become somewhat, you really need to talk more often, but what
So it might be robotic.
Also, to me, that's how I feel. I think you have to go and talk to someone and you can feel almost the emotions of people having a bad day. To hear someone say that is a lot different than seeing it written in minutes.
Now, see, that's important, and I think that has something to do specifically with how we were raised and what we were accustomed to, okay? I went to Catholic school. I had to learn how to, we didn't print. You did Palmer method, okay? And Sister made sure that it was beautiful, okay? And to this day, if I'm writing anything that's creative, I write it longhand. And then I may type it up in probably size 24 font so I can read it, okay? But even when I did my doctoral dissertation, I wrote my doctoral dissertation longhand. And then I typed it in to the computer.
I was taught the Palmer method too. And I volunteer at Ronald McDonald House, and one day they needed envelopes addressed. And they came to me and said, Mary Esther, will you address them because you have such good handwriting? And the teacher was very strict about how we did it. Another thing was in numbers. I had a teacher for the bookkeeping class that she made me, or she made the whole class, write numbers for 2 weeks. If you wrote them perfect in the first week, you didn't have to go on to write them the second week. And they used to tell me at the bank that my numbers were always
Perfect numbers.
perfect. You had to have the 7 come down, the 9 do what it had to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's interesting because, again, we come from a particular era, and interestingly enough, oftentimes when we're on retreat with the kids, we will invite them to write a letter to themselves, okay? They struggle with that because they're used to, But what really surprised me is they hadn't a clue how to address an envelope. Well, why would they? That's right. Everything's email. Why would they? Okay? And it's interesting that over the last week I had confessions Thursday and Friday. And the kids, they're fabulous. They come in and the majority of them will say, Father, I really feel horrible. They say, I speak so poorly to my parents. And so then for penance, I will say to them, okay, Christmas is coming up. You're probably going to give your parents a gift. I said, you want to really give them a good gift? Along with the gift that you give them a handwritten letter telling them how important they are, how much they love you. And I said, and you must put this section in. Please hold on to this letter. Believe all the things I'm saying here and not the stupid things that come out of my mouth sometimes. And the kids are like, that's brilliant. I said, they'll hold on to it from the day you give it to them, and it'll mean everything to them. Because it's so rare. It's so rare. I mean, you think about some of the things, like when I'm teaching teachers, I'm telling them, after you give some information, tell a story. Why? Because storytelling is a lost art. Okay? And people are pulled in by storytelling. Really good preachers tell stories. The Holy Father tells stories. Okay? You find a dynamic preacher, you're going to know that he's a really good storyteller. Not that you don't have to do some of the other information, but to couch it in a story or to use a story to get the audience, to get the congregation, and then move and then close with what you've already said in that story makes a big difference. Makes a difference because those are some of the things that are so uncommon to them. I can throw up a video every 2 minutes, and these kids are going, oh yeah, okay. Okay, so in section 5, we're going to move on to section 5. The Holy Father speaks of global inequality. Pope Francis speaks of the direct correlation of the deterioration in the human community and the natural environment. He said they're interconnected. Okay? He lists many, and we can look at a few of them. He says potable water runs short, people are forced to buy bottled water. The oceans are ruined and coastal fishing villages are destroyed. And the very fabric and manner in which those people live is gone. It's changed. Those people are affected by what's happened in the ocean. Would this Holy Father be speaking these things if he had not lived in the midst of this? I think I already addressed that. Maybe the officials of the Vatican, all the heads of the different dicasteries, maybe they should be moved out of Rome. Okay? Maybe they should be called upon to live in various areas of the world so that their experience is not in the lavishness that has been princely palaces and servants. We can see that the Holy Father certainly lives in a very simple manner. But I'll tell you, the princes of the church, that's never really resonated very well with me. Never has. Okay? And again, I make mention here, I'll always be grateful for my time at Five Wounds and the homeless men that lived outside my door. Pope Francis makes this plea, a plea that Jesus made and has asked the church throughout the centuries to do the same. We must hear both the cry of the poor and the cry of the earth at the same time. They are connected. We are connected to the earth. What we do to the earth is going to send some message back to us. Okay? For many years, there have been those who have said that the population growth is the answer to all the ills. Here again, this might be seen as a quick fix, but it does not answer all the ills. They will use this but not recognize the absolute selfishness and extreme consumerism as the very cause of the problem. Okay, so if I want to live well, then I want to limit how many people can be born on the earth. Not so good. Okay? So selfishness and extreme consumerism, very important for us to take a look at. Greed again enters in. It's not that we have too many mouths to feed, but that we do not have the willingness to feed them. If we can put a man on the moon and do so many other wondrous things, how is it we cannot feed, clothe, house, educate, and provide medical care for the people of the earth? Think of the amount of money that goes into so many other things rather than people. Some years ago, and I mentioned this earlier, there was a book entitled The Lexus and the Olive Tree, written by Thomas Friedman. I really do highly recommend it. Okay? And it's talking specifically about the haves and the have-nots. The have-nots wanting what the haves do have and have every right to it. Okay? But something's going to have to change. There is a wonderful saying by the Sisters of St. Joseph of Orange. And they have these bumper stickers made up, and it's wonderful. Live simply so others can simply live. Basically, the Holy Father speaks to the fact that there are emerging economies in India, Brazil, China, and other nations, and they want the lifestyle we have and that we have had for many years. The problem is, if we all want this lifestyle, the earth will not be able to sustain all these wants. Okay? The answer is to simplify and adjust so that others may have a dignified life. We need to start to understand the difference between wants and needs. Okay? No question. Any of you that are parents, you're going to provide for the needs of your children. Okay? Do you provide for all their wants? And if you did, you're crazy. Really. Okay? And yet, I see a lot of that happening. Okay? Especially during this last economic downturn, I really was on the outs with some friends of mine because they were struggling, but their son had no change in his lifestyle at all. I said, why are you doing that? He needs to learn that if there's an economic downturn and you need to make the adjustments, he needs to make some adjustments. But we're in this era, I'm sorry, where a lot of parents want to be their kids' friend. Danger, danger. Okay? You need to be the kids' mom and dad. You can be their friend when they're adult children. And sometimes when they're adult children, you still have to be mom or dad. Okay? To live simply is in the spirit of St. Francis of Assisi, and thus it makes great sense that since the Holy Father took his name, that he's going to do everything to live up to it. I find it most interesting that no Holy Father in all of these years has ever taken the name Francis, because it's a hard name to live up to. If in your own family there was a member of the family that was in greater need than the other, does it not make sense that you would make whatever adjustment you'd have to care for them? Think of it. Okay? We need to start to make this transition when it comes to what each country can do to change the tide of climate change. Certainly, those countries with more will have to do more, so that eventually all countries will be on a level playing field. We cannot merely give lip service to this. There must be a change in our hearts, and have that change in our hearts make its way to our heads and then out through our hands. Think about the prayer of St. Francis. It's a doer's prayer. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Let me sow your love. It's a doer's prayer. How can I affect change? By being active in what needs to be done. The meeting in Paris, although somewhat thwarted by the terrorist attack, has moved forward. If our body needs to be healed, we cannot do something because we have undergone an attack. We cannot be diverted by such things. We must attend to both. Okay? Resources running out will mean war among nations. Those who do not have will go after those that have. There are powerful financial powers that control this, and the political process as well. Sacrifices will have to be made, and that is not an easy word that people in today's society want to hear. Okay? Any of us that were part of parents that grew up in the Depression, we know. We heard the stories. If we didn't experience it firsthand, we heard the stories. We know the sacrifices that they made. On a very minimal level, I've had to make sacrifices, far fewer than my parents and my grandparents, but I still knew of them. I've watched parents willingly make whatever sacrifice they had to in order that their children would not know a change in lifestyle during the economic troubles over the past decade, and I shared that with you. I warned them that they were not doing them any favor, and now they are seeing this come home to roost as a disservice. 2 godsons. They're now in their 40s. Okay? Years ago, I was with their parents. Their parents were packing their house up in Willow Glen because they were moving up north to open up a bed and breakfast. Okay? And I'm there helping them pack. And the mother is very, very angry. She's furious with her sons because they're in watching television while we're packing and moving and doing stuff. And she started to complain. I said, stop. Stop right here, because I told you years ago to make the boys do something to contribute to the house, to do chores, to do this, to do that, but they never had to do anything. She said, well, they're in their 20s. I said, you think immediately when they turn 21 they learn responsibility? They learn it all along, okay? They learn it all along. And so we have to be aware of how we are affecting changes among our kids. I said to our administration, we need to have prefects every day that have to clean up the lunch areas. They'll learn. Eventually, they'll learn to clean up after themselves. Because one day, they will be the prefect that will have to clean up all the garbage that was left out there. But we have faculty and staff that go along picking up garbage. Nuh-uh. No. Okay? It's part of being a community. And we need to get that larger concept of the world community. Okay? In the concluding segment of chapter 1, the Holy Father speaks to the fact that there does exist a variety of opinions. Ultimately, what the Holy Father is asking for is for people to stay at the table and continue to enter into dialogue. The need of dialogue among differing approaches and points of view is essential. This is the plea to ask for open and honest dialogue and debate. And so I want you to take a look at that last set of reflection questions. How does global inequality affect care for the environment? How are the poor adversely affected by climate change, either in the first world or the third world? And why is the response to known data about the environmental crisis being met with such a weak response? I have my answers to every one of them, but I'm not going to impose them on you. I want you to think about these. Talk amongst yourselves. See what you think. And we are over time. I'm sorry. I usually try to stop right on time. Because, you know, the sun's down. It's time for me to get my pajamas. Any closing comments, thoughts, questions?
Yeah. Well, we were just talking, Father, in the news about in Thailand, the shrimp in that factory where there was slave labor and where people were working under those conditions and everything because they just bought them.
If we knew.
And then the companies and the buy it and then selling it.
They were like a slave trade, you know, they would buy these people to go and work for these companies, but the companies were not like that.
Well, it's going to be interesting because we already have it in our own backyard, but with the Super Bowl coming up, there's going to be human trafficking like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah, that's for sure.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen, if it's not already happening. Okay? I thank you for coming out. I know it's a cold night. Chapter 2 next month. And if I don't see you beforehand, I know it's Advent, but happy Christmas. Happy Christmas.